Then we use ChatGPT, right? We use AI now in ways in which when I started doing this kind of thing in Merlin new openings back in 2015 through 18, we didn't have this thing called AI. Every kind of data set that we wanted to get our hands on, we either had to buy or, make ourselves over, weeks and months. The power of some of the used wisely and with an awareness of that they'll make mistakes. These large language models are really seriously accelerating our decision making.
Welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast, where we discuss the latest trends and challenges facing the attractions industry today.
We chat with some of the top leaders in the field and provide resources that will help develop your career in this great industry.
I am Josh Liebman. I am obsessed with the guest experience and helping attractions make that their top priority for success.
And I'm Matt Heller. I am passionate about organizational effectiveness, leadership development, and employee engagement.
Now sit upright, hold on tight, and get ready for the Attraction Pros podcast.
Hey, Josh, how's it going?
Hey, Matt. I'm doing great. How are you?
I am fantastic, and I love the hay.
Thank you.
The hay is coming along.
Banana.
Hey!
Yeah.
Took me a second. But I have a question for you.
Okay.
You have two small children.
I do.
I'm guessing that you read stories to them.
I do.
Yes. Are these stories that you have now memorized and kind of get through the book? Or are there new stories all the time? Maybe this is a three-part question. And do you ever make up stories for them?
Cracks knuckles here. Yes, I could recite the entire Pout Pout Fish to you right now. Amongst many, it's just one that's top of mind. We now have extended into there's the offshoot books of the Pout Pout Fish. Also, just came out in theater. There's now a Pout Pout Fish movie. Pete the Cat. We've got a lot of those. So I read a lot of those. So many over the years. I think if you were to count the number of children's books in my house, it would be in the hundreds that we've accumulated over time. Some of them are like the board books for, my daughter, she's still, really young and just being able to not worry about, paper cuts or, tearing out the pages. And then my son, who's 5, he's got some slightly longer books. Some of them I think are a little too long, but yes, I read often to them. My daughter is now at the age where therefore now both of my kids do a really good job of extending bedtime and prolonging bedtime by asking for more books. And what was it? Do I read a lot of books? Yes.
Have you made them up?
Yes. Have I memorized some of them? And then my son for the last almost 2 years now, after we read, then now I have to tell stories. And
Yes.
so yes, I am often making up stories on the fly. Sometimes I've got some central themes. Sometimes I try to do something that's very exhausting, like making up stories about him entering a yawning competition because he's also very competitive. And so, but he sees through me on that. He's like, "No, I don't want the yawning competition." I was like, "Fine, Lightning McQueen's going to the yawning competition," so I can skirt around it a little bit. But yeah, yes, and yes to all three.
So you may have just created another one of those combination of things that we used to talk about. Competitive storytelling.
Oh man. I don't know if I win, but
Well, I think we may have to have Ben back on the podcast to talk about that. But the reason I asked about the stories that you are either reading to your children or you're telling them is because Ben Thompson, who is the CEO of Storyland Locations, talks a lot about story. And when you think about it, stories are all around us. Stories we hear from a very, very young age. We hear them from our parents. We hear them from people around us. We see stories all over the place. And so it makes sense that someone like Ben would now make it his mission to tell even more stories and more immersive stories as his career.
Yeah, we get to hear him do a deep dive into just the very broad question of what is story and tie that into talking about story-led experiences, which is what he really focuses on with Storyland Locations, as well as we were to backtrack his entire career to date, that has been a through line in his life's work.
Absolutely. He also talks about how Storyland Locations now connects IP with operators. So it's a lot about building relationships. It's a lot about understanding kind of who goes together and how to bring those elements together to be able to tell a compelling story and create a great experience.
Yeah. And then because of that, does a lot of reading. And he talks about, studying history in college and then reading a lot of business books. And we talk a lot about self-reflection, whether business books are business books or are they self-help books. But either way, it ties into themes of being a lifelong learner.
Absolutely. So is it time to turn the page and get to this interview with Ben?
It sure is, Bob Seeger. Hey, Ben, welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast. We are so excited to have you on today. How are you?
I'm good, Josh. Yeah, nice to see you. Nice to see you too, Matt. I know it's been a little while arranging this with everyone's schedules. Really looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, we are too. So let's get started. Ben, what's your story? Tell us about your background, your career.
Oh, wow. Great. Yeah. And I know later on you're going to dig into me about the number of times I mentioned story in my LinkedIn profile. Well, yeah, I'm 47 years old. I have three beautiful daughters that are all about to kind of fly the nest, or my wife and I hope they will. I studied history at university. In my first job, I worked for the Mars organization, so did 11 years at Mars, different locations around Europe, and kind of blue chip sales and marketing. And then I got the opportunity to move to the Walt Disney Company, where I had 5 amazing years in the Diego Lerner period, and I'll talk a little bit about that later on, how important that was. Then I got right into the attraction business with Merlin, late 2014, early 15, and spent 3 years kind of traveling the world, learning an enormous amount. I think I learned a lot more than I contributed at that time to the whole kind of process of how you ideate, create, develop, launch, maintain, successful attractions, both on the theme park side and then the indoor midway gateway. Now started my own business, absolutely loved it. Everyone should do it at least once. Ran that for 2.5 years. And as that company grew, I needed a great creative partner. And I just met some of these guys at this crazy firm called Storyland Studios, and we ended up partnering together. I hired the company. I think by the time I was hiring them for the third time, they returned the favor. And so I spent the last 5 or 6 years building the Storyland kind of international business. And then last summer, I span out a new company, still very much connected to the group, business and relational connections with the group. But my company that I'm running, which is Storyland Locations, which is our development firm. So that's kind of the story. Happily married, very active outside of work, and most days of the week, absolutely love what I do for a living.
That's awesome, Ben. There's a lot to unpack there, a lot to kind of dive into. I actually want to go back to your studying history in university, and maybe tell us a little bit about how that came about, and then maybe a second part of that question is how studying history now helps you tell the stories that you're telling.
Yeah, I mean, I went to university in 1996. It's a long time ago. Back then, choosing one of those kind of mainstream humanities subjects, history, English, or a modern language or whatever, was quite normal. I think nowadays, kids coming out of going to college, going to school, going to university are much more likely to choose more of a focused, degree subject, something that's directly associated with what they want to do after. That was not the case. And maybe there's something about a UK or European tradition or trend there as well versus the US. I mean, most of my, hundreds of friends in the States in business did some kind of business degree. I didn't do a business degree. I did a management training program at my first company, which was kind of like an on the job MBA. But to answer your question, I mean, I just love story. My love of story goes back to, being a little kid in bed, listening to my dad sat on his chair, reading me stories, Tolkien, Lewis, whole bunch of others that are maybe more UK culturally, relevant. Just William, anyone? And, hearing my dad's voice, bring these stories to life. And then I would get the cassette tapes. I would listen to these great, English thespians, actors, Michael Hordern, read me these same books. So story got a hold of me, at an early age. And I guess history as a degree subject is the closest you get. I mean, you could do English literature, but I think history had that sort of analytical requirement, to look at the data, to look at argument, to construct narrative and descriptions and all that kind of, rich stuff, right? So I could easily have done English at uni, but I chose my favorite subject, which was history, and it was a fantastic, I think, a cultural education, as well as, if you like, how to do seminars and collaborate with people and all that kind of thing. Funny thing, my youngest daughter is going to do art history or history of art. I believe it's the same subject, probably up in Edinburgh. And if you look at the course content for art history, man, it's incredible. I want to do this thing. It's basically a study of human culture and civilization. And if that's not interesting, I don't know what is.
That is interesting, and it's just all of that is fascinating, and connecting history even with so with literature as well of just what's the through line in it. It is the story. So like you
Yeah.
mentioned, it is probably going to be one of the overarching themes that we're already very much deep into in this interview already. And so I think it's worth bringing up at this point that in doing a quick Control F on your LinkedIn page, well, Command, I have a Mac, so Command F, the word story shows up 45 times. And actually 46, but one of them is history. So, but which is, of course, is very connected as well.
Who's not that anyone's counting or anything.
Exactly, exactly. Tell us more about that. You talked about your father reading you stories when you were a child, and Tolkien and all of that. And I have young kids. I'm reading them stories. It's not Tolkien. It's more Lightning McQueen and Pout Pout Fish. But they'll get there, right, as they grow, as they get older a little bit. But connected with some good licensed IP with that. But of course, that's also going to be a part of the. What does story mean to you? I know it's a very broad question, so feel free to take that in any direction you want.
I think as I've gotten older, I've realized that story isn't just entertainment, and neither is it just escapism. It is those things. And a great story, transports you out of your context into wherever, space, history, the future, the past, different worlds, your own world at a different time, all that kind of great stuff. I think that I've come to observe, learn, stories how we make sense of the world. We all have a story that we tell ourselves about what the world is like. According to me, according to Josh, according to Matt, the world is a certain way. There's a narrative in that. We always say it's Storyland, stories, character, setting, and plot. There are characters, people, national actors, people that live on the same street, my colleagues, my family. There's the setting, it's really wonderful, fascinating that living these lives we get and these careers in the industry, the sort of setting for our work can be completely global in nature, done through a little office and a Zoom screen and trade events and conferences, but setting is also individual projects and the plot. As in, the earth, right? Mel McGann talks about this idea of the soil, the soil giving birth to the right idea for that location, that project, that whatever it might be, which is actually very Frank Lloyd Wrightian. Wright's idea of organic architecture is not about biomimicry and buildings looking like plants or the jungle or whatever. It's the idea that each building, the design, the concept for it should emerge from its environment, from its landscape. So yeah, I think it's fundamental. I think that as creators, as people with energy and talent and resources, if we can put our time into story-led experiences which are positive, which are transformational, which bring people together rather than divide them. These are not trivial matters, you know. I mean, just go and take a look at the world. Wouldn't it be greater? Wouldn't it be great to have more experiences where we see others' perspectives and we see each other and we're able to connect and just be a little bit more friendly to one another. So yeah, story is, I think, it's not absolutely everything, but I think within every kind of activity, element of life, professional life, family life, you'll find a storyline somewhere. So yeah, that's my one day PhD thesis, maybe
Yeah.
on story.
I love it. I love it. And it makes me think of two things, specifically what you talked about earlier about art and literature, right? That was how people told stories back in the day, right? They told their stories through their paintings, through their art, cave drawings. That was all about telling stories and you know, kind of sharing the narrative of the people that and what they were going through. It also makes me think of a good buddy of mine who his greeting for everybody, it wasn't, "Hey, how are you?" It was, "Hey, what's your story?" That's what he would always ask people. And my comeback was always Three Little Pigs. I don't know why, but that was my comeback to him. But
Nice.
anyway, as we're talking about story, and I love the way you kind of package that, I would love to learn more about what Storyland Locations does, and how that relates to all those things that you just mentioned.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I guess I've been working, you know, if you can call what we all do working, for 25, 27 years, something like that. So I think I have a fairly good understanding of my strengths and weaknesses. I did spend quite a lot of my early career thinking that you know, you should try to be an all-rounder. You know, you should have like at Mars, I remember at one stage we had 67 competencies, all the kind of positives of work life described, and you pretty much had to master them all. Or maybe there was like a top 30 or whatever, but everybody should be a certain way. And I think that changed when I started to read the Strengths Finder work, Marcus Buckingham, Donald O. Clifton. I think it's Donald O. Definitely Donald Clifton. This idea of now discover your strengths. So the idea of, you know, finding the absolute right shape of work for you. And then Carol Dweck kind of comes along and changes that all up again and shows how much more elastic the brain is than we, you know, once thought it. So we're sort of somewhere in the middle. But locations, I think, is formed around a need that I see in the industry to be able to connect owners of incredibly valuable intellectual property that's been loved on and sweated over and brought to life, you know, sometimes through decades, and people who want to host and welcome those kinds of story-based experiences. And story-based, by the way, is kind of like a graphic equalizer. It can go up and down. There's heavy story immersion. You know, Galaxy's Edge would be a good example of that. And then there's the whole trend for social gaming, which is much lighter on story immersion, much more about, you know, kind of physical activity, competition, challenge, and all those kind of things. And then there's the operator. And actually, in my development work, the building relationships with getting to know the operator community has been the thing I've kind of got to last, actually, ironically, having, you know, been an operator at Merlin. But you know, that group, you know, entity that's neither an IP owner nor a real estate owner, but without which you can't do any of this, you know. A lot of my early career in the industry was with either Disney or you know, Universal or whatever it might be, or working with giga projects in the Middle East, where, you know, you've got an operator, someone's good, they're already there, you know, they got the money. But locations is about, for me, it's about being very entrepreneurial. So I sat down, gosh, 2 or 3 years ago with some of my business partners at Storyland Group, and we said, look, I mean, the design business is great. We love what we do. We want to be in the design business, for a very, very, very long time. But you're not building up equity when you're in design. You are as good as your last project, and you aren't participating, financially, economically in those projects. It's kind of a terrible business model. It's great. We love it. Just don't hear what I'm not saying. But we said we want to have our own experiences. We want to be developers. And it was a really kind of crazy ambition because we didn't start from, a ton of capital. If we'd have been sitting there with, 20, $30 million like as a fund ready to go out and do this, it would have been, we could have done it all ourselves, but we weren't. We had our wits, we had our insight, we had our hard work and our relationships and so on and so forth. So locations was about saying, I back myself. I back the need for a group that can be a bridge between those kind of entities that I talked about, and that there's enough brilliant IP locations who want to create beautiful spaces to welcome people and so on, and that if we can bring both creativity, it's like, again, to quote Mel, left and right brain. If you can bring the visionary creative allied with the hard work, actually, the rigor of, okay, take an IP. You guys will have seen we have our partnership with Nate Bagazzi, Nateland, which is going to be hopefully in Nashville in the coming years. Well, we're also working with Nat on a smaller format. So, okay, great. It's going to be in the US. Well, that's quite a large country, many, many, many amazing cities that could have, an experience from Nate. But what's the absolute right, city to choose, and what's the right district, and what's the right street, and what should be in that experience anyway, and what should be the business model? There are hundreds, of questions that you need to ask and answer to bring these things to life. And I believe that we're capable of doing it, and we're having some early success. So yeah, that's what we're attempting to do.
So first, I'll just say I'm a huge fan of Nate Bargatze, and at
Good.
IAPA in the opening ceremony, when I saw the announcement in conjunction with Storyland, I freaked out, took a picture, and sent it to my wife, and I was like, Nate is talking about how he doesn't know what how to pronounce IAPA. I was like, it's like he's here at the show. He's like, in our industry, we're doing this. It's all that. It's
Yeah.
amazing. So I personally can't wait for that. But then it also kind of ties a little bit into the question here of get really almost following the trail of everything that you just described here of what happens next. What's the process here? Is there a chicken and an egg here of here's the owner of the IP, there's the real estate developer, you mentioned those who want to host it, so almost really a steward, a custodian of the IP as well. How do those three come together I hate to say from concept to execution and opening, because I know that we don't have nearly enough time to go through all
Yeah,
that.
no.
Just a little bit broadly speaking.
I mean, it's a classic iterative process, which means it often feels like chaos. But ultimately, you want to start with a why question. What, other than the pure financials, and sometimes it is that, but mostly it's not, or at least if that is a major part of it, there's lots of other more mission and purpose, or more emotionally led, or more difference making types of reasons for doing things. So our process involves trying to get to the heart of that why very quickly and in a very aligned manner, i.e., if there is a person that's very central to the IP, they're in the room, but so are their colleagues and advisors and friends, or people outside of their business, or if we're working with a large IP holder, a Hasbro or whomsoever. There's lots of different people in that room who do different things on the IP. So we try to get alignment very quickly on kind of mission, purpose, vision. What is this all about? And then the next thing that I do is I go to competition. I have a very acutely aware in our industry of the number of intelligent, hardworking, financially well-backed people trying to do what I do every single day, out there trying to eat my lunch and certainly keep their own lunch. So I take a vision and I will very quickly go and try and place it into a market and say, well, gosh, are there like 20 people trying to sort of fulfill this same vision that it already? If so, we probably need to course correct that and just rephrase or repurpose, the energy. But and what oftentimes is the case, if that it is a distinct opportunity, and if we've done our job well at crafting that purpose, we will have asked questions in that session about specific problems and opportunities in the world that we could try and solve, right? So if we've done that job right, so then I'll go into the market and I'll try and say, okay, well, what does this look like? What is a benchmark? And benchmarks are just so incredibly helpful. I say this to our project team, creative team, all the time. As you begin any creative exercise, whether it's a social media graphic or a master plan or a brief for a video, whatever it might be, go and look at the benchmarks. Look at where that end thing is going to end up, what part of the value chain, some really great companies, what they've done, pull it together on a little, PowerPoint or whatever you want to call it, and just sit with it, to use a Rick Rubinism, just sit with it. Let the creative kind of inspire you, disgust you, whatever it might be. And then Nick Varney at Merlin would hammer us all on quite rightly, on the compelling proposition, that key visual that he's going to spend, X 100,000 on a bus stop or a tube ad campaign. Everything about the experience that's got to put the hairs on the back of your neck up and compel you to go and visit. Sit with that key visual as a benchmark and try and interpret or think through the creative decisions and the messaging I think they're kind of works of art, right? In a way, I do think that. So yeah, vision, competition, market, benchmarks, and then you just start to model things. Okay, so we've got an amount of space that we're playing with. We know the capex per square foot. We know what operational throughput capacity needs to be. Then that's just lots and lots of hard work of actually, comparing. And then we use ChatGPT, right? We use AI now in ways in which when I started doing this kind of thing in Merlin new openings back in 2015 through 18, we didn't have this thing called AI. Every kind of data set that we wanted to get our hands on, we either had to buy or, make ourselves over, weeks and months. The power of some of the used wisely and with an awareness of that they'll make mistakes. These large language models are really seriously accelerating our decision making. I just did over a kind of two or 3 days. I did a model looking at every metro population across the USA. I had a ticket input on the one hand from Nate. So how many tickets he sold per city over 2 shows. And I just put that into the model and I was able to spit out after, a few days work, the absolute right top 5 locations based on five or six, including things like occupancy costs, occupancy ratio, which is rent to revenue. Like just incredibly powerful mistake avoiding stuff. So yeah, and then it's just back and forth with the client. You're trying to keep momentum without over promising. And oftentimes, in this job, I'm the client. So I have to manage my own emotions and my own natural enthusiasm and lack of patience at the same time. So yeah, that's it. Iterative.
Well, and it sounds like all along that process, it's based on relationships, right? Relationships that you have with all the different people along that line. So can you talk a little bit about maybe how you just talked about kind of managing yourself. How do you kind of start with yourself and then work outward to manage all those relationships and make sure that those are all in the right places so you can do all of that great work that you talked about?
Yeah. This has been a big learning for me. When I was like, I don't know, starting out in my career, I had a lot of blind spots. I did not come with an awareness of my impact on other people. And someone would talk to me and take me to one side, and they would say, look, there's a difference here between your intention, which we all know is good and right, and and your impact. You're doing things which upset people completely unintentionally, and I would always be aghast at that. And I've learned to manage myself a little bit better, but by no means perfect. I think it's about reminding yourself that you're in a team setting, collaborating with multiple different companies, with, let's say, how many people are on the call or in the meeting, 10 people in the room or whatever, that are each as passionate, determined as you are for their own particular outcomes. They're all dealing with the day that they're having as well, just like you are. And 99 times out of 100, people are just trying to do the right thing and move the project forward. They're not trying to be blockers, Ben. They're not trying to get in your way and slow or stop your project out of some, because they don't like you, or you know what I mean? There's just a real reason there why, yeah. And so, yeah, like after from starting off being kind of terrible at that, I think I'm quite good at navigating, different stakeholders, but it's because I've had the pain, the pain of mistakes. It really is the most powerful, in my experience. It's the most powerful kind of milestones for guiding yourself. And when you're running the company, you don't have that many people to go and talk to and give you feedback. People don't give you a lot of feedback. You have to manage yourself. But remembering, oh, when I did that, then I had that bad situation and how awful I felt about it. Those are really helpful markers to me. So yeah, that's maybe another whole other podcast. But suffice to say, I'm absolutely a work in progress when it comes to managing those relationships. At least I know how incredibly important it is, and how you can lose a relationship really that you've built up for a long time really quickly if you're thoughtless, and selfish and self-centered and clumsy.
Well said. Yeah, there is a lot there to that we could dig into potentially. Back, like you said, that could potentially be an entire interview. But that was a lot there to that's just really good guidance on self-reflection, self-leadership in some ways as well, and kind of learning from the mistakes and kind of moving forward. I am curious, this is maybe kind of switching back to the maybe the nuts and bolts a little bit. Kind of again with connecting the IP, to the specific locations and sort of the balance between that. One thing we're wondering is about, what characteristics does an IP need for it to be successful in a location-based experience. I'm curious as far as if there's ever been something that's come up and you said, no, that won't work in a story-led experience, or won't work in that format or something like that. I'm curious as far as what's needed from the IP, from the brand.
I think that the human desire for experiences and the way that the industry and economics have developed to be able to give people those experiences has created an industry, experience economy, credit Joe and Jim, that's vast. And I think there's a place for almost any, intellectual property that wants to come into the market, whether it's kind of high-end branded residences, resorts, cultured, curated niche experiences at one end, or big mainstream, be it permanent, be it touring, any kind of thing. I think there's room for a lot, of different IPs. And I don't think there is a hard and fast set of, criteria. that would be, because there's so many facets of the industry. Do you know what I mean? I define the industry really broadly. I define it differently from how IAPA would define it, from how TEA define it. Although we did change the name of the report that we do in TEA to the Global Experience Index for this kind of reason. I think it comes down to the people. Sorry to be a stuck record, but I know a lot of IP owners, and that some of them have teams that are dedicated to this kind of industry. I think the most successful are brilliantly led by hardworking, visionary, caring people. Shout out to one of my great buddies in the industry, Matt Prue at Hasbro. And, his counterparts at other organizations are brilliant as well. Really brilliant. Matt's just a really great guy, and people love to work with him. And so they bring him stuff. And that's true of lots of others, So I think you could, if you're sitting, managing an IP that's, a lot smaller than the big ones, there's a place for it. If you're winsome, if you're persistent, if you're prepared to be flexible about the particular format that IP is gonna come into. And I think part of that is commercial as well. It's for operators, IPs can be perceived as an expensive tax, right? As a tax on profits. 5 to 7% of turnover, gross sales minus tax, credit card fees. It's a lot of money, every year. Now, positioned within a great business plan with a fantastic kind of proposition, it's money well spent, but it can be perceived in that way. So if you are in the early stages or building something, I would say don't be afraid to cut some people some nice attractive deals, along with all the other things that I mentioned. But I don't think there's a set of on its broadest sense. Now, when you get given a commission for a certain square footage or asset class within a master plan and whatever, that then you start to make short lists, and you'll look at proven how well has this IP performed in. If we do a set of benchmarking on social gaming, I'm going to be saying, okay, well, we need to look at Putt Shack, Flight Club, Electric Shuffle, Fair Game, Swingers Crazy Golf, that kind of thing, because those 5 or 6 have sustained their performance over 15 years, and they've successfully rolled out, and they've taken external financing and what have you. But that's when I've got a specific brief for a type of entertainment type of space.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big topic.
Again, we could probably take a whole podcast to talk just about that as well. But Ben, I want to go back to some of the things that you've mentioned. One of the observations that I'm making about this conversation is that you seem to define being a lifelong learner. So many people talk about that, but the number of resources that you've cited, the number of authors that you've cited, is really, I think, probably shaping everything that you do, every thought that you have, and you take little bits from lots of different places. Can you talk about maybe the importance to you in your journey to continually learn and even take things from various resources that aren't just necessarily, kind of attractions related?
Yeah. In my 20s and 30s, when I was considerably less busy than I am now, I read a lot. I read many business books. My wife used to rudely call them self-help books. They weren't really, people like Patrick Lencioni. They were business fables. They were stories. Good to Great. Good to Great it's a number of brilliant individual stories of how people and teams were in a market context, and they responded to external stimulus, and then the level 5 leader, the antithesis of the charismatic, bombastic kind of person, quietly determined, went about changing that business from the inside. So yeah, I read a lot in my 20s and 30s. Now I listen to podcasts. I listen to the Founders podcast, David Senra. along with the 5 or 6 other podcasts that I use that I listen to, and I still read books but now you see I'm reading for the projects. So I've read 5 books on Frank Lloyd Wright in the last kind of three months because we're doing a project with Frank Lloyd Wright with Tom Zala at Imagine. But yes, being a lifelong learner. I mean, I am I think always going to be dissatisfied with how much I know or how proficient I am at any given activity. And I think in a relatively healthy way. I mean, I play the guitar and I sing, and I do it a lot better than I did it 5 years ago. But I would like to be unrecognizable in 5 years' time as to how I take up that craft, that art, in a way that the people I'm doing it for, not me, really benefit from. And I think in my business life, I think I've maybe caught up to like an average, you know, like a 6.5 out of 10 or something. And I'm excited and slightly impatient for the next 10 years when I need to, because I keep putting myself in situations where I don't quite know enough, you know, or I know enough to be dangerous. There's something about my psychology or something where I keep going, well, I know a bit about that. Right, let's go and dedicate like half of your time to it. Let's start a company, on that basis. So I think the learning thing has to go with the territory a little bit as well. But yeah, look, books. I mean, go if you're a marketeer, go and read The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. Go and read How Brands Grow by Byron Sharp. If you take those 2 books, go and read almost anything by Michael Lewis. Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow. There's some gold out there. But what you have to do is you have to sift. You have to be like the old, gold prospector with your big kind of iron mesh circular thing down at the riverside. Just sift for those nuggets. You don't have to read the whole book. I think it was Freud who really dismissed the idea of reading all the books. He's like, read enough. I think it was Freud. I'll go and ask my wife. My wife's doing an MA in kind of counseling, and so she'll know.
Well, I like the phrase "knowing just enough to be dangerous." I like that. Gonna
Well,
dwell on that.
I mean, just to be clear, that's the starting point.
Right,
You know,
right. Exactly.
you build, you build from there, and you educate yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're getting close to the end of our time here. I feel like we've blinked and all this time has passed. But you talked about being unrecognizable in 5 years in terms of playing guitar and singing. You talk about kind of just your talents that you're building. Curious as far as looking outward toward the industry. If let's say we say 10 years from now, what do you see for story-led entertainment?
Well, I mean, I think for the industry as a whole, I see, two big trends. I mean, look, obviously, AI is going to superpower creatives and storytellers to be able to create even more and more, realistic and immersive experiences. That's just going to happen. And I think hopefully, as long as we don't get into uncanny valley too much, I think it's going to be great. So I think if the guys creating Galaxy's Edge, which still my all-time favorite theme park experience, I think if they had AI the way we have it now, that would be richer and deeper, and the interaction that each individual has with that story, the idea of really being me. I think Margaret Kerrison phrased it as being me, being seen in the Star Wars universe. I think that would be done on a different level. And yeah, so I think that's gonna happen. I think the other big trend I see is convergence. I think that the skills that are honed in the theme park world are going to be in more and more demand in other areas of the industry, and I think there's going to be crossover between museums, science-based experiences, educational theme parks, live theatrical performances. I think all these things are going to get more and more converged rather, up together, which I think is going to be really fun for people. For Storyland Locations, I mean, it's about proving out the model. So we have some successful clients. We're out in the marketplace. We've done some great deals. We're coming to AAM, American Alliance of Museums in Philly this year. So towards the end of May, we'll be launching our Frank Lloyd Wright exhibition. Once that's up and running and in our first location, I was chatting to a very high-profile institution here in London just today about that. Then it's about that kind of proof of concept. And then again, for anybody in whatever stage in their career, POC, proof of concept, or minimum viable product kind of connected ideas. If you can show your colleagues, boss, team members a little piece of the thing actually working, or spot, again, back to my point about benchmarking, see that somebody else has done it and try to understand mechanics, economics of that. I think that can be really, really powerful at convincing people to part with their time and money. So yeah, hopefully by then we'll have had a bunch of successful proof of concepts. We should have launched our first permanent location, which is something we've been working on for the last 18 months with a very, very, very powerful and amazing IP. Which we're looking at a permanent location in the City of London, and we'll probably be in more JV, joint venture partnerships as well. I have no desire to turn locations into a team of hundreds of people. I want to be a great partner to people. So I mentioned our co-production agreement with Tom Zala and his incredible team at Imagine Exhibitions as they were as a good example of that. Tom's built an incredible kind of engine, if you like, of creating world-class exhibits and touring them around all over the world. He has something like 50 different exhibits there. Tom was a natural partner for us when I'd done some creative and built a relationship with an IP. I don't need to. There's no point in me trying to build that whole team that he's built. Why not joint venture? We're in another arrangement with an FEC operator that's similar like that. So, and again, all that, Matt, to your question, that comes back to, managing and treating as gold these relationships between people. Trust, ultimately, if people trust you that you're going to pretty much do what you said you do or die trying, then that counts for an awful lot. So I hope, as well as the businessy stuff, will be in some great JVs and partnerships with people.
That's awesome. Well, we can't wait to see all of that come to fruition. And Ben, we're going to be watching. We will absolutely be watching. But Ben, this has been a great conversation. If people want to learn more about you, if they want to count the number of stories in your LinkedIn profile, if they want to learn more about Storyland Locations, where would you send them?
I'm available on LinkedIn. I try to respond to most people that contact me, so maybe that'll come back to haunt me. But check me out reach out to me on LinkedIn, and then just put Storyland Studios into your search engine of choice. Where Storyland Locations page is at the top of that homepage there, so you'll find us there. Or connect with me at one of the many trade events, conferences around the world. We do IAPAs every year, as I mentioned. I will be at a conference which is coming out after this podcast is launching. I've just remembered, so that's not relevant. But yeah, thanks very much, guys. It's been great chatting to you.
Thanks, Ben. We really appreciate it. And thank you for responding to us on LinkedIn when we reached out to invite you on the podcast. So we're just so appreciative for your time today. I learned so much. This is so fantastic. And for everyone out there who is watching and listening, just remember, we are all attraction pros.